What's up, everybody? Back at it again with the second part of the USC season preview. This is Troy Talk. Hope you enjoyed when we reviewed the offense in the last episode. Today, we are going to talk about the defense. I'm really excited about this episode because I think that this side of the ball is much more interesting for USC this season. There are a lot of unanswered questions, which we'll hopefully go over today with the positions, and there's going to be a lot of new faces this year, so should be very interesting. I'm here to give you my thoughts personally on a group that is being coached by a year two D'Anton Lynn, so it really should be interesting to see if they take that next step. I think USC goes as far as their defense will allow them to. As cliche as that sounds, defense wins championships, but I think back when USC was great, obviously they had amazing defenses, and Lincoln Riley's offense kind of takes care of itself. So, as always, feel free to shoot me an email with any questions at troytalk3@gmail.com. You can also find me at Troy Talk on Blue Sky and then Troy Talk Pod on X. All right, let's get to it. So, probably the group that everybody's most excited about and always has the most complaints and questions about is the defensive line. I'll split it up today, I think, between the interior and kind of the edge rushers, which they're technically, I think, all defensive line, but they're a little bit different, coached by different people, and for the most part, it's a different position. So, starting with the interior, a couple big transfers, some new faces: Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky and Jaw Jarrett from Georgia. Both of those are 300 plus pound, nose tackles slash defensive tackles. So the people that are clamoring for more size up front to play in the Big Ten and just compete overall, I think are going to be happy with at least that aspect of it. Now the question is, how good are they? I think Keyshawn Silver had a lot of hype. Same with Jaw Jarrett, to be honest, coming out of high school, just because they're big defensive tackles from the South. As far as the actual production, you always worry about people that weren't super successful at a previous stop that transfers to a new stop, and you just kind of assume or you expect them to be really, really good because of all the potential, but you have to kind of ask yourself, why weren't they really good at their previous stops? And I think you could ask that question about both Silver and Jarrett. Now, you could also make the argument that Jaw Jarrett, for example, was behind a lot of really good players at Georgia, and I think that's fair. But I think it's also fair to say that he probably didn't live up completely to expectation. I think same thing with Keyshawn Silver. I think this is his third stop now, so paid a lot of money for these two, likely seven figures. So they're going to be thrust into a starting position most likely, and they're going to have a lot of expectations. It'll be interesting to see if they can be on the field at the same time. I think when it's a run situation, I think you'll probably see them on the field. But with passing, I don't think they'll both be on the field at the same time. It seems like that would limit USC's pass rush. And I'm just not sure. With 300 plus pound people, they can play every snap, right? They get tired pretty easily. But I think overall, I'm excited to see what they can do with this new opportunity. And coached by Coach Henney, I think they have every possibility of living up to the potential they once had. And maybe all they need is a change of scenery. But we will see. So, rounding out the group, you have G.D. Abasari and Devin Tompkins from last year. Those are more defensive tackles. Abasari was really, really impressive, I thought, in his limited snaps last year. He was a three-star coming out of Minnesota, so I don't think really anybody expected him to contribute right away. So I think he was already ahead of schedule as of last year. He's definitely got the size, looks the part. And same thing with Devin Tompkins. He's one of those SoCal kids that I think came in around 240 pounds and is now up close to 300 pounds. Really filled into his body, and I thought made some plays last year as well. So I think a little bit more coaching, and he can be a contributor. I think you'll see both of them getting a lot of snaps early on in the season. And then we kind of go to the more defensive ends, which is still, like, I guess, considered interior defensive line. We have Cam Fountain, who showed a lot of glimpses last year. I think people were super hyped about him coming out of Texas. He was a blue chip recruit. Um, Unsure whether he was going to get a lot of playing time last year, but he fought his way into the rotation, whether it be because of injuries or just being really good. And I think you might see him a little bit at edge rusher too. I think he played a little bit, but he's kind of getting to that 270, 280 range where I don't think USC is going to be playing an edge rusher at that position, but he's athletic enough to do both of those things. So I think he's going to take his next step and could be an all-conference player in the future. Next, we have Kobe Pepe, who seems like he's been here forever. Another 320, 330 pounder, nose tackle, probably the backup nose tackle on this line because I think Keyshawn Silver is going to be more at the three technique. Jaw Jarrett's definitely the nose tackle. But Kobe, I think, showed a little bit improvement last year. Really couldn't see the field his first 3 or 4 years in the program, and I guess 3 years. And I thought he took some strides last year. I think the coaching helped a lot, and his mentality helped a lot. And hopefully he has a great year, and he can convince his cousin, who's one of the prominent left tackle recruits next year, to come into the Cardinal Gold. So excited for him. He's always been a good Trojan. Next we have Carlin Jones. This is kind of the wild card, I think. Another 4-star coming out of high school last year, was hurt pretty much all of last year. I think it was a foot injury, so you really didn't see him produce anything last year. But he was a true freshman. Wasn't really expecting much out of him, but hopefully he's healthy now and has the 300 plus pounds. Really, really quick too, from what I recall in his recruiting profile. So a lot of expectations for him for sure. But if he doesn't stay healthy, a lot of people could pass him up. All right, newcomers. So obviously everybody knows Jakeem Stewart. That's the number one recruit, big NIL player from last year. Thanos, as everybody calls him. I'm excited for him, but I think it's important to temper expectations on him. Still got to grow a little bit. He's already 270, 280 pounds, but I think he's got to get the muscle up, and definitely going to be competing against a different crop of opposing players than he was used to. And I think it's going to be really beneficial for him to just be kind of like that third or fourth option off the line this year, kind of rotate him in pass rushing situations, and basically put him in a position where not much is expected out of him, and just kind of let him play and learn kind of as we go. I think expecting him to play big minutes as a true freshman on this line is not realistic at all, and I think would ultimately harm his development. So I think they need to ease him in a little bit. Next we have Floyd Boucard's also a newcomer. I think he's probably going to be a defensive end. He is on campus right now. I haven't heard too much about him, so wouldn't be shocked that there was a red shirt in his future. Gus Cordova is another very interesting recruitment. He had some off the field issues, but seemed like once those were kind of settled, he turned a corner. He was considered probably a high 4-star before that issue and became a 3-star after the issue. So the talent's there. His head seems to be a little bit more on straight than it was. So he's probably the wild card of the defensive ends, because if you watch his tape, he's pretty dang good. And he played at a high level competition in Texas. So then lastly, we have Cash Jacobson. He's kind of the random one that got thrown in to the recruiting class last year. I think he's from Oklahoma. Definitely an under the radar recruit and probably needs a couple years in the system. But from what I understand, he's made a lot of impression on the coaching staff early on this spring. So don't expect too much from this year, but I think a good depth piece and could contribute for us in the future. So I think that covers pretty much all the players. So as far as what are going to be the strengths? Is it going to be pass rush versus run stopping? Tough to say. I think in theory we got a little bit bigger, so we should be a little bit better against the run. I'm still a little hesitant to say if we're going to get a consistent pass rush. We were pretty abysmal last year. I think we were 100 plus overall sacks wise, ranked. So, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the edge rushers next, but you would like to see a little bit more of an interior pass rush, because an interior pass rush helps out the edge rushers so they can get more one-on-one situations and get to the quarterback. But I think the pro of this situation here is we got bigger, and we needed to get bigger because we were getting pushed around last year. Had a lot of people playing that were undersized. But with coaching, you can't teach size. So you have that natural size, natural talent with coaching. I think ultimately it'll be a improved group. As far as a grade, I hesitate to really give it more than a B. Really, the transfers are going to make or break this class. If they don't contribute, or if they get hurt, I think we could be in a little bit of trouble there. Okay, I will transition to the edge rushers. I think one of the more fun groups, you could, like I said, you could probably throw Cam Fountain in here too, but Braylon Shelby's probably the prized possession in this class. I think, he was hurt a little bit last year, but you saw some of the flashes of what made him kind of the exciting prospect coming out of high school. I think he starts there. Anthony Lucas, you also showed a lot of promise last year until he got hurt in that Penn State game after the cheap shot. So both of those two guys are going to get heavy minutes. I think rotate those pretty aggressively, and hopefully they can get to the quarterback. You definitely saw it last year, but as I mentioned before, we were ranked 100th in the nation in sacks, so it has to be better. Whether they're going to get help from that interior defensive line or they're going to take the next step themselves. Hopefully, it's a little bit of both, and I think we see them kind of at least contribute. Maybe get someone to like an 8 or 9 sack season. That would be awesome. We also have Elijah Newby, who was converted from linebacker. Really interesting prospect, only 230 pounds, so he's definitely the speed edge rusher. Smaller than Braylon Shelby and Anthony Lucas. So interesting to see because that's not really what D'Anton Lynn I think goes for with that position, but he has all the talent in the world. May be able to, on specifically pass rushing downs, provide a little bit more speed off the edge and make the quarterback a little bit more uncomfortable. But should be interesting to see his development. And lastly, as far as a newcomer, Jaden Ramos was someone that was thrown into the recruiting class last year, pretty much at the end, I believe. He's out of Texas. Really good film. Really, I think had a lot of length, a lot of wingspan. So definitely a project for sure, though. I wouldn't expect much out of him in the next couple of years, but um, we have Braylon Shelby and Anthony Lucas here for another 1 to 2 years, so maybe he can contribute after they're gone. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot of them. There's only four. But like I said, throwing Camp Fountain, and it actually has pretty good depth if you look at it. So as far as grade, I'd probably give this one closer to a B plus. I really do believe in Braylon Shelby and Anthony Lucas. It just depends on them being healthy, um, and I think ultimately, if they show the production, this group could end up being one of the better groups on this defensive side of the football. Okay, all right. So linebackers, another very interesting. I think all of these are really interesting, but led by Eric Gentry, obviously. And last year, really bummer what happened to him with the concussions. But it's hard to ignore the talent that he has, and just whenever he's on the field, he seems to make plays. I think the question is whether he can stay on the field, and if that's up to USC to kind of keep him on a snap count, or play him a lot and then hopefully he stays healthy. I think that's very risky. Um, but I think when we're playing, the big boys and we need something to happen, he needs to be on the field. And I think I've been listening to a couple of podcasts on the USC beat writers, and they even think that putting him at nickel would benefit a lot because he's so athletic, so long, would help in the run game, and also he can guard those tight ends. He can guard even the slot receivers. He's good enough to do all that. So hoping for a big year out of him, and hopefully no more concussions. All right, next is my favorite player on this defense. It's Desmond Stevens. You saw him last year as a true freshman, couple games. I think he played in the Penn State game. I want to say he started the game. Had an interception, I believe. Really big guy, 230 pounds, super athletic. Only going to be a true sophomore. I think you'd expect him to be the starting Mike linebacker, which is a lot of responsibility for someone that age. Doesn't have a lot of snaps, but you could definitely tell the USC staff liked what they saw out of him last year because they were giving him opportunities when, even though there was, Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas Arnold ahead of him. And I mean, I think that brings up a kind of an interesting point. Last year, I'm not the biggest Mason Cobb fan. I think he was vastly overrated and only kind of regressed as a football player when he was here. Whether that's him or the coaching, tough to say. But I think we were a net negative when he was on the field. So I was clamoring for a lot more, Desmond Stevens last year. But Easton Mascarenas Arnold, I thought he was a good contributor, gave it his all, but he was limited, right? Didn't have the athleticism that we'd probably want out of a linebacker. Although Mike, it's not as important to have that athleticism. It's more about the cerebral part of it, the IQ. But I think both of those guys just capped our ceiling, and I think that the fact that they were veterans and brought in the transfer portal, Lincoln Riley trusted them, so did D'Anton Lynn. But I don't think that we're going to hit where we need to be unless we play our youngsters with these kids that have, I think, a lot more athletic ability, and thus the ceiling is going to be higher. Which transitions to another youngster who I believe will be a redshirt freshman. I think he was hurt last year, Jaden Walker, already up to 230 pounds. Big hitter, really athletic. I think you'll see him maybe fill in behind Desmond Stevens as backup Mike. I don't know if they're going to play in Will or Mike for him, but really interesting prospect. And I think that's the type of player that we're going to need to see a little bit more of this year. We're going to need to play our youngsters. That's really something I'm going to harp on probably all season. Is I know veterans know the playbook, yada yada, but we're not going to know if we have the next, Desmond Stevens if we don't play these people. If we keep bringing people in the transfer portal over them and play over them just because they may have been pretty good at their last stop, it doesn't always translate like that, right? And bringing in a linebacker in the portal, which we'll talk about a little bit later, could force Jaden Walker to transfer, and he'll go kill it at Michigan State or wherever. Yeah, I think he's from Michigan, so he'll probably transfer back home and kill it there, right? So I really think we need to get him to see the field a little bit more. And then as far as veteran leadership, we have Anthony Beavers, who seems like he's been at USC forever, but finally officially converted from safety to linebacker. Always been a big fan of him. He's a big hitter, good kid, smart, aggressive player. I think I would love to see him playing heavy snaps this year, to be honest with you. He could be, the one that's starting at the will. Tough to say. If we play nickel, obviously it'll probably be more Gentry Stevens, but we'll see. And yeah, I mean, lastly, I think it's just Garrison Madden, who's also bulked up. I think he came in at like 200 pounds, really fast guy. I think he was running high 4.4s, low 4.5s, up to 230 pounds. That's pretty impressive, but he's been here for a while, hasn't ever seen the field, so I'm just not sure how good a football player he is, but he's still here, so credit to him. He's getting his education and probably a good special teams player for us. And then as far as the newcomers, a couple interesting ones. We have Matai Togiai, who is from, I believe, San Clemente, if I recall. Um, Pretty much an Eric Gentry clone from what we've been hearing. Really lanky playmaker, can rush the quarterback, can play in coverage, but needs to put on some pounds for sure. So he's probably a bit away from playing. So I would not expect much out of him this season. And then AJ Tuatele, who's from Vegas, another late add to the recruiting class last year, really kind of came out of nowhere. He was like low 3-star out of North Vegas, and all of a sudden you saw Texas, USC, everybody was jumping on him, and I mean, looks the part. You watch his film; he's an absolute animal, really aggressive, and I think is going to be a big contributor um, in the future. Don't think he's probably going to get heavy snaps this year, but I wouldn't be shocked. He's that kind of guy that you see at Washington State or at Oregon State or UNLV, that just becomes an all-conference player, and you're like, oh, that's the guy I want in the portal. So hopefully USC can develop him at USC and he stays here. I'm just hoping he's not anticipating to get heavy minutes as a freshman, because D'Anton is pretty stingy about rotating those linebackers. So we'll see. Hopefully it's not a necessity that he plays, and he plays because he's really good. Also, just brief mentioning, USC is looking at a couple portal prospects. We have Gary Bryant out of South Dakota, and I think it's Andrew Simpson out of Boise State. So would I be shocked to see one of them go to USC? No. But if that means that we see less of your Jaden Walkers and even Anthony Beavers, I'm not sure how much it's worth it. Both of them I think are a little bit limited athletically, so I don't really want to bring in another Easton Mascarenas Arnold or Mason Cobb into this team. I think, as I was mentioning before, it limits our ceiling, and I really want to see what the youngsters can provide. So I think the biggest question is depth. We really only have 3 linebackers from my count that have played any snaps, and I wouldn't even call Desmond Stevens and Anthony Beavers, significant snaps. But it's just a question of should we be going to the portal, and I think ultimately we'll get somebody, because depth is important, right? If Eric Gentry can't get see the field because of concussions and he's out for the year, then that puts us in a real sticky situation. It's just you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page here, and we're not kicking our youngsters out for portal players just for the sake of depth, you know, um, because I think in the long run that could end up hurting us. All right, next we're transitioning to the safeties. I think a very top-heavy group. Kamari Ramsey, who's the All-Conference player from last year, and then you have Bishop Fitzgerald, who I believe is also All-Conference from NC State in the ACC. Both of them are really, really good players. I think arguably top 10 safety duo in the nation. Kamari's probably going top 3 rounds next year. We were lucky to even keep him this year, to be honest with you. But he probably plays more of the free safety role, I think, in this. Although neither of them are really a true free safety, which is very interesting. Kamari can play middle field for sure, but I think he's best towards the line of scrimmage. He's an instinctive tackler. Um, but I think with Bishop Fitzgerald really being a downhill, strong safety kind of tackler, I think you're going to see Kamari forced to play a little bit more middle. But who knows? Dancy Lynn might be just like, hey, we don't really need a single high safety in this defense, and we kind of just work it that way. I know Kamari was being practiced at nickel throughout the spring, which I mean I think it's a great position for him. I'm just not sure we have the depth at free safety or at safety in general to put him there. But I think in certain situations it would make a lot of sense. But only certain situations, special packages. I think we'd benefit from that. We saw Kendi Urlacher from Notre Dame, true freshman last year, just transfer in. So I think you'll see him probably be the third or fourth safety behind the two aforementioned, Ramsey and Fitzgerald. But I also think you could see him at nickel. I think it would be interesting to throw him there because he's a really good run defense stopper, and then also just really instinctive. So you need those guys at nickel, right? You need those guys that are just really high IQ players that have a nose for the football. So wouldn't be shocked to see him getting meaningful minutes because the nickel position is a little bit interesting this year. I think it'll probably be, I don't know. We'll go over it in the corners. I'm interested to see if any of the safeties that I'm about to talk about are going to play the nickel, but moving it along, Christian Pierce is one of my favorite players. I think he's definitely more of a strong safety, big hitter, good tackler. Probably back up Bishop Fitzgerald this year. Hopefully we see him rotate a little bit. I think I can't remember if he's a redshirt junior or senior, but really, really good football player, and I think he's kind of waited his turn, and he can make a big contribution this year. Marquise Gallegos is another one. I think he's more of the true middle fielder, free safety. I was a big fan of him coming out of high school, coming out of Sierra Canyon. I think he's long, rangy, really good nose for the football, good ball skills, but definitely needed to bulk up and really hasn't made waves in practice so far. So I hope to see a little bit more out of him this year. Obviously, if he's seen the field, that's probably not a good thing because that means Kamari Ramsey or Bishop Fitzgerald's not playing for whatever reason. So we'll see. He's probably one more year away from any meaningful snaps, but I think he has the tools for it. It's just he needs to kind of put it on the practice field to kind of make the coaches trust him. You also have Jarvis Boatwright, who again didn't really play last year, could have redshirted. Haven't heard much from spring with him, so big unknown, big question mark. I'm actually surprised he probably stayed. So I would say if he doesn't contribute this year, definitely someone I would look to that probably would look into the portal. I think, if I recall, he's from Florida or at least the East Coast. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, haven't heard much about him this year. As far as the newcomers, the one I actually have heard quite a bit about is Steve Miller out of Georgia, another really random player, but someone did their homework because really good film, and he's actually showed up, during spring practice. Made a couple big plays, kind of surprised some people, so excited about that. As far as a grade for this group, I'd like to say it's B plus. I think that it's really top heavy, so you could even argue an A minus if you're just talking about the Kamari Ramsey Bishop Fitzgerald package. But I think the depth is a concern. So a little bit unproven, but I think if they do materialize with their potential, I think B plus to A minus is totally within reason for this group. All right, lastly, we have our corners. So I'll split this up a little bit from more of a boundary corner versus a nickel corner, because that's a very prominent position in USC's defense, the nickel. So we'll start with, so it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of these guys are interchangeable. There's a couple that are straight up boundary corners. That's all they can play, which is probably going to be your DeCarlos Nicholson. Isaiah Rubin, who was out of, I think was it, I can't remember if it was Vegas or Los Alamitos, but kind of a random player there. Uh, hasn't done much, and I don't think he's going to do much this year. But your DeCarlos Nicholson, I thought he showed glimpses last year, and I think he's had a pretty good spring. So wouldn't be shocked if he was the second corner. Um, but the question is, who's going to be the other corner, and is he a USC caliber starting cornerback? That's another good question. I'm not sure he is. Probably a good guy to have in certain situations because he is very big. He has the size, but I'm not sure I want him, guarding your stud receivers on the other team. So we'll see. Maybe he takes the next step. This is last year. Really good Trojan, really hard worker. So hope for the best from him. As far as like a newcomer slash transfer player who's probably the best corner in this room, it's DJ Harvey. I think he played more of the regular cornerback last year at San Jose State. Now, obviously, it's a step up in competition, so I think his natural position is probably a nickelback, but I don't know if that's where USC is going to play him just because of necessity. I think they might just play him at boundary corner because he's the best cornerback. You also have Marcellus Williams, who brother of Max Williams, out of I think St. John Bosco. Really, really, really good player. I'm a big fan of Marcellus Williams. Now, is his best position boundary corner? Is it nickelback? It's probably nickelback, but I again think they're going to try him out at boundary corner. He's a little bit bigger than his brother, so I think he can play that. But didn't play any at all last year. Coaches are really impressed by him. The fans love him, so wouldn't be shocked to see him play some meaningful minutes, if not start this year. But big question marks, right? Like we haven't seen it on the field, so we don't know how he's going to be. But his ceiling is very high. And then we have Brain Conley, who I think everybody's a big fan of just because he's super athletic. Another 6 foot corner, probably plays boundary. Done well in practice from what I saw. So maybe we'll see him contribute a little bit, kind of like as that fourth corner. But still unknown, right? So that's going to be kind of the talking point with this group is a lot of unknowns. And I know there's talk of a portal cornerback out of Tulane. His name's Rayshawn Pleasant. Pretty good player. Had a good year last year in Tulane. Also a really good returner. So I've heard USC might be the leader with his recruitment, and I think it would be a good idea. We need one more corner, especially on the boundaries, to provide a little bit of depth. Now is he the starter? I'm not sure, but we definitely need the competition and the depth there. All right, transitioning to nickel. I think really the only set in stone nickel cornerback that we have returning is Prophet Brown. I think that's where everybody likes to see. Although he did play a little bit of boundary last year, if I recall. But really good Trojan. Been moved around. Really hasn't gotten a lot of minutes, a lot of snaps. But I thought he's been pretty solid every time he's been in on the field. He's played in both of the bowl games the last couple of years and showed out in both of them. So I hope he gets more minutes, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him be the starting nickel. Alongside probably DJ Harvey and Marcellus Williams. That would be what I would guess to be the starting corners. But really behind him, I think it might be some of the corners that I just talked about. Marcellus Williams might play nickel behind him. We might even see a true freshman play nickel behind him. We have James Johnson, who's a really heady player. I know Gerard Martinez of USCFootball.com compares him to Jalen Smith, which is a great comparison. That's a great football player, one that had to play boundary corner last year, but is by trade probably going to be a nickelback in the NFL, and he's probably going to go in the first 3 or 4 rounds. So if we can get a Jalen Smith clone, no complaints from me having more of him on the field. As far as other newcomers, Alex Graham out of Colorado, people are excited about him. Really good player, football player overall. I think he was a two-way player. And then Tristan Castro, who's out of Upland, I want to say. More of a boundary corner, I'd probably say, along with Alex Graham. Maybe even a free safety, too. So wouldn't be shocked to see either of them move to safety if we develop a little bit more depth in the corners. So I think the big question here is position battles. It's going to be who starts and then where they start. As I've kind of mentioned, it's a lot's up in the air. And if those transfer players can, be good enough to start, then I think you might see one of them start. But I think the spring and the summer practices are going to tell a lot. I wouldn't be shocked if this one goes down to the wire, and there's a lot of switching up prior to game day. Even a lot of oars on the depth chart, as they say. Yeah, and as far as a grade, I'd probably a B minus. I think just because of the unknowns. And if you're playing DeCarlos Nicholson heavy snaps, it's probably not what you want out of a Big Ten group competing for the playoffs. But I am high on a lot of them, so if they do materialize and live up to their potential, I think this could end up being a really good group. But they are young, and if DJ Harvey can turn into that lockdown corner, kind of be just what Jalen Smith was last year, then maybe increase it to a B. But I think as of right now, it'll be a B minus for me. Okay, that's pretty much it. I mean, we have kickers and punters. I don't think anybody really cares to hear about that, but we got a new punter. Can't even remember his name off the top of my head. I think he's from like Western Michigan or something like that. And then we're gonna have a new kicker too. So hopefully they're better than what happened last year. I know our punter was really good, obviously the best punter in the nation. So we're gonna miss him, Eddie Chaplitsky. But I've heard this new punter's pretty good too. So if we could even get 75% of what we got last year, I think we'll be okay. And as far as kick returns, punt returns, I think you'll see a little bit of Makai Lemon, maybe some of the youngsters. But question is, do we want Makai Lemon out there getting hurt? Probably not. Our receiver core is pretty thin, so wouldn't be shocked to see him start. But if he gets banged up a little bit, they'll probably take him off pretty fast. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening. As far as what's next, tough to say. Maybe when the recruiting dead period hits a halt, I might throw a recruiting podcast out there. Maybe after the end of spring, might throw something out there. Maybe we'll get on a couple guests. I'm not really sure. I know probably during the season, I would like to do something weekly. If not just USC specific, transition more to sports handicapping. We'll see. Depends on how much time I have, and if I could get 2 podcasts out a week, that'd be great. But not sure if I want to transition to more of a preview podcast versus a recap podcast. I think I'm leaning more towards like a review post game podcast, and then maybe on a Friday or Thursday throw in something with sports handicapping. I think that would be kind of fun. But ultimately, the world is my oyster. We'll see what we can do with this exciting project, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the near future. Have a good one.